The first time I heard Daniel Mercer say he had died 13 times, I thought he was lying. The second time he said it, I thought he was mentally ill. By the third time, I was no longer certain I wanted to know the truth. We were sitting across from each other in a small interview room beneath a private medical research facility in Pennsylvania. There was nothing frightening about the room. That was what bothered me. White walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, a cheap digital clock mounted above the door, a security camera in the upper corner, and a recorder between us. Daniel had requested the interview himself. He had also requested that the security camera be disconnected. The facility refused. So Daniel had done something strange. He took a piece of black tape from his pocket and covered the camera lens. I watched him do it, and then I asked, "Why?" He returned to his chair. "Because it knows when people are watching." I smiled. "You mean the camera?" "No." He looked at me. "I mean what's watching the camera." That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to be a normal interview. Daniel Mercer was 47 years old, at least that's what his current medical record said. He had brown hair that was beginning to turn gray, pale skin, and deep lines around his eyes. He looked exhausted. Not tired, exhausted. There is a difference. Tired people look like they need sleep. Daniel looked like he hadn't rested since childhood. I pressed the record button. "Let's start with your name." "Daniel Mercer, age 47. Occupation?" "Former construction supervisor." "Former? I don't work anymore." "Why?" He looked at the recorder. "Because I keep dying." I waited. He didn't smile. "How many times?" 13. I glanced at my notes. 13 confirmed cardiac arrests? No. Then what do you mean by died? My heart stopped 13 times. That isn't necessarily death. It is when you're gone long enough. How long were you gone? Depends on which one. I leaned back. Okay. Let's take them one at a time. Daniel nodded. That would be better. Start with the first. He looked at the clock. It was 2:54 p.m. Then he looked back at me. The first time I died, I was 24. What happened? Water. An accident? Yes. Where? Blackwater Quarry. I wrote it down. Tell me. Daniel took a slow breath. I was working near the quarry with 3 other men. There had been heavy rain for several days. The ground was unstable. He paused. One of the men slipped. You tried to help him? No. I looked up. Daniel's expression didn't change. He wasn't the reason I fell. Then what happened? I heard knocking. I stopped writing. Knocking? Yes. From where? Under the water. I waited. Daniel continued. The quarry was deeper than people thought. There were old mining tunnels underneath it. We weren't supposed to go near the water. So you heard knocking beneath the surface? 3 knocks. 3. Always 3. I made a note. What did you do? I looked over the edge. And? The water was black. That sounds normal for a quarry. It wasn't. Why? Because I saw a door. I stared at him. A door? Yes. Underwater? Daniel nodded. A white door. Attached to anything? No. Just floating? No. He looked irritated by the question. It was standing upright on the bottom. That would be impossible. I know. How deep was the water? Maybe 50 feet. And you saw a white door 50 feet underwater? I didn't see it from the surface. Then how? Daniel looked directly at me. I was already drowning. The room went quiet. He explained that he had fallen into the quarry while trying to reach one of the workers. He remembered hitting the water. He remembered the cold. He remembered trying to swim upward. Then he remembered something grabbing his ankle. An animal? No. Another person? No. What grabbed you? I don't know. He closed his eyes, but it pulled me down. He described the sensation. Not a hand, not fingers. Something colder. Something that seemed to wrap around his entire leg. He stopped fighting. He said there was a strange calmness after that. The surface became farther away. His lungs burned, his vision darkened. And then he saw the door, white, perfectly clean, standing upright on the bottom of the quarry. Daniel said he couldn't explain why, but he knew the door was meant for him. He swam toward it. The closer he got, the warmer the water became. Then the door opened. What was behind it? I asked. Daniel didn't answer. Daniel? I heard someone breathing. Who? Myself, I frowned. You heard your own breathing? No. He shook his head. I heard someone breathing exactly the way I was. He looked at the clock again. 2:58. Then he said, and then I saw myself standing behind the door. I stopped writing. You saw yourself? Yes. What did he do? He told me not to come inside. What happened? I asked him why. What did he say? Daniel's voice dropped. He said, be because you're already dead. I stared at him. And then? My heart stopped. According to the medical report, Daniel had been underwater for nearly 7 minutes. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low. He had no pulse when emergency responders pulled him from the quarry. He was pronounced dead. Then, approximately 11 minutes later, his heart started again. No explanation. No electrical shock. No medication. Nothing that could account for a spontaneous recovery. When Daniel woke 3 days later, he asked one question. Did you open the door? His father told the hospital staff to ignore him. Daniel said he didn't remember asking the question, but he remembered the door. For the next 6 years, nothing happened. Then he died again. This time there was no water. There was a car accident. Daniel was driving home late at night when a truck crossed the center line. The collision crushed the front of his vehicle. His chest struck the steering wheel. The emergency team found no pulse. Daniel was dead for approximately 4 minutes. Then he woke up. Again. But this time there was no quarry, no water, no door. At least not at first. He said he saw it after the crash. The car was destroyed. Steam was rising from the hood. Glass covered the road. And 20 feet ahead of him stood a white door. Alone, no walls, no house, no frame. Just a white door standing upright on the asphalt. Was it open? I asked. No. Did you touch it? No. Then what happened? I heard knocking. From the other side. Yes. How many times? Daniel looked at me. 3. I felt the first real chill of the interview. Did you open it? No. What happened? Someone opened it from the other side. And? Daniel leaned closer. I saw my father. His father had been alive at the time. Your father was behind the door? Yes. What did he say? He said my name. Did you answer? No. Why? Because my father wasn't supposed to know where I was. I frowned. What does that mean? Daniel looked down. My father died 8 years later. That was the first detail that made me stop treating the interview as a bizarre medical story. Because Daniel's father had indeed died. I had checked. But Daniel's father had died at 3:17 a.m. That detail wasn't in the newspaper. It wasn't in the hospital record. It wasn't even in the public death certificate. Daniel had told me before I had ever mentioned it. I asked him what happened after seeing his father. Daniel said the door closed. Then everything went black. He woke up in the ambulance. The paramedics said he had been dead for 4 minutes. He said he remembered only one thing. His father had been standing behind the door, and behind his father was something tall, something that had been smiling. I asked Daniel what it looked like. He said, I don't know. Why not? Because it didn't have a face. I wrote that down. The third death happened during surgery. Daniel was 31. He had developed a severe infection following an industrial accident. Doctors performed emergency surgery. At 3:17 a.m., his heart stopped. The surgical team revived him. But something strange happened. Every clock in the operating room stopped at exactly the same time. 3:17. The wall clock, the anesthesia machine, the nurse's digital watch, even a clock on a computer monitor, all frozen. When Daniel regained consciousness, he was crying. A nurse asked him why. He said, because she was still standing there. Who? My sister. Daniel told the nurse he didn't have a sister, but he continued crying. The nurse asked him what his sister looked like. Daniel described a little girl, 4 years old, brown hair, white dress, a red ribbon tied around her wrist. The nurse asked him her name. Daniel said, Abigail. There was only one problem. Daniel Mercer never had a sister named Abigail, at least according to every official record. His parents had one child, Daniel, no siblings, no miscarriages listed, no adoption records, nothing. But 6 months after the surgery, Daniel found something inside his father's desk. A photograph. A little girl, 4 years old, standing beside his parents, and on the back, written in faded ink, Abigail, October 13, 1971. Daniel said he asked his mother who she was. His mother slapped him. Then she told him never to say the name again. 2 days later, she died. Heart attack. 3:17 a.m. I looked at Daniel. You're telling me your mother died at the same time? Yes. Did she see the door? Daniel's eyes moved toward the covered camera. She opened it. I felt the room becoming colder. What happened? She let something in. What? Daniel shook his head. I don't know. Then what happened? She started forgetting things. What things? People. Her family? No. She forgot faces, then names, then places, then her own reflection. 3 weeks before she died, she looked at Daniel and asked, "Who are you?" He said that was the last time she ever spoke to him. I didn't know what to say. So I asked the question I had been avoiding. What connects all of these deaths? Daniel looked at me. The time? 3:17. He nodded. And the door? I looked at the photograph, still lying between us. You said there were 13 deaths. Yes. You've described 3. 12 have already happened. And the 13th? Daniel looked directly at me. Hasn't happened yet. When will it? Tomorrow. I laughed, this time nervously. You're serious? Yes. Whose death? Daniel didn't answer. Daniel? He slowly pushed the photograph toward me. I looked down. The farmhouse was still there. Daniel stood on the porch. The white door was closed, and beside him was another person. Me. I stared at the photograph. I was younger, much younger, maybe 23. I was standing beside Daniel as though we knew each other. My right hand was resting on the white door. I looked at Daniel. I've never been there. Yes, you have. I would remember. No. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He leaned forward. You forgot. What did I forget? The night you died. My stomach tightened. I've never died. Daniel shook his head. Everyone dies. That isn't an answer. You just don't remember yours. I stood. The interview was over. I told him I needed air. He didn't try to stop me, but as I reached the door, he said, "Don't look at the clock." I stopped. "What?" "Whatever you do, don't look at the clock." I turned anyway. The digital clock above the door showed 3:17. It was only 3:06. I looked back at Daniel. He was staring at the clock. And for the first time since the interview began, he looked terrified. Then the lights went out. Not just in the room, the entire building. I heard the security system click off. The air conditioner stopped. The hallway outside became completely silent. Then came 3 knocks. From inside the wall, knock, knock, knock. Daniel whispered, "It's here." I couldn't see him. "What's here?" He didn't answer. Then something knocked again, this time from directly behind me. Knock, knock, knock. I turned. There was a white door where the wall had been. No frame, no hinges, no explanation. Just a white door. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Don't open it." I couldn't speak. "Whatever you hear," he whispered, "don't open it." Something moved behind the door. Then a woman's voice came from the other side. Soft, old, familiar. "Daniel?" He froze. I looked at him. "Who is that?" He didn't answer. The woman spoke again. "Daniel, honey." His face went completely white. "My mother," I whispered. "Your mother is dead." Daniel nodded. "I know." The handle slowly began to turn. Daniel stepped backward. The door opened an inch, then 2. A thin line of darkness appeared. And from inside, that darkness came the smell of wet earth. Daniel grabbed my shoulder. "Listen to me." I looked at him. "If she asks you to come inside..." The door opened wider. Daniel's voice broke. "Don't tell her your name." The woman behind the door whispered, "I already know it." And then she said my name, exactly the way my mother used to say it. I had never told Daniel my mother's name. I had never told him how she spoke to me. Yet the voice was perfect. I took 1 step backward. The door opened completely. There was no woman behind it. There was no hallway, no room, no building, only darkness. And somewhere inside that darkness stood 13 chairs. 12 were occupied. The 13th was empty. Then one of the seated figures slowly raised its head. I recognized him. Daniel's father. He looked exactly as he had in an old photograph, but his eyes were completely black. He pointed toward the empty chair, then he whispered, "That's yours." The lights came back on. The white door was gone. Daniel was gone. The interview room was empty. Only the recorder remained on the table. I grabbed it. I ran outside. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. Then I looked at the passenger seat. Daniel was sitting there. I screamed. He turned toward me. But he wasn't Daniel anymore. His face was expressionless. His eyes were black. And he said, "You shouldn't have remembered." Then everything went dark. When I woke up, it was morning. I was still inside my car, parked beside an unfamiliar road. Rain was falling against the windshield. There was no Daniel, no farmhouse, no white door, only a photograph lying on the passenger seat. I picked it up. It showed the farmhouse. The date on the back was different. October 14th, 1998. I turned it over. There was one sentence written beneath the photograph. "The first death was yours." And beneath that, in smaller handwriting, The other 12 were only practice. I didn't tell anyone about the photograph. Not the police, not the medical facility, not my editor, and definitely not my family. I knew how it would sound. A man I had interviewed, a man who supposedly didn't exist, had appeared inside my car after a blackout. Then he disappeared. Then I found a photograph dated 28 years earlier showing me beside a farmhouse I had no memory of visiting. And beneath it, someone had written, "The first death was yours." There was no reasonable way to explain any of it. So I did what I always did when something frightened me. I investigated. I started with Daniel Mercer. By noon, I had found 12 death records. Not rumors, not internet stories. Actual records. Hospitals, police reports, emergency services, insurance documents. 12 separate incidents, 12 separate dates, 12 different causes of death. And every single one had something in common. Daniel's heart had stopped at exactly 3:17. The first death was the quarry. The second was the car accident. The third was the surgery. The fourth happened 6 years later, carbon monoxide poisoning. Daniel had been sleeping in a rental house outside Erie. A faulty furnace had filled the basement with gas. His roommate found him unconscious. The emergency team arrived at 3:41 a.m. Daniel had no pulse. He had already been dead for approximately 24 minutes. But when the paramedic opened his airway, Daniel suddenly inhaled. He sat upright. And according to the official report, he said, "There's someone in the basement." The paramedic asked who. Daniel pointed toward the stairs. "There are 13 chairs." The basement was empty, except for an old white door. The police report described it as a utility door, nothing unusual. But the photograph attached to the report showed something different. The door was standing alone in the middle of the basement. There was no wall around it, no frame, no hinges, just a white door. I stared at that photograph for nearly 10 minutes. Then I zoomed in. Someone was standing behind it. A little girl, 4 years old, white dress, red ribbon. I remembered Daniel's mother mentioning Abigail, the girl who supposedly never existed. I saved the photograph. Then I found the fifth death, a boating accident. Daniel was 38. He was fishing with 2 friends when the boat overturned during a storm. One friend survived, the other drowned. Daniel disappeared for almost 8 minutes. His body was found beneath the boat. No pulse, no breathing. When he came back, he immediately asked, "Which one of them opened the door?" The surviving friend told investigators Daniel had been staring at the water. He kept saying there was a house underneath the lake, a house with 13 windows. The 6th death happened 9 months later, a construction accident. Daniel fell from a tower. He hit the ground hard. His heart stopped. A co-worker performed CPR until the ambulance arrived. Daniel was dead for 11 minutes. When he regained consciousness, he said, "I saw the room." "What room?" the paramedic asked. Daniel answered, "The one behind the door." "What was inside?" 12 people? And who was the 13th? Daniel looked at the paramedic. "Myself." That sentence appeared in the report, word for word. I read it 3 times. Then I found the 7th death, hypothermia. Daniel disappeared during a winter storm. His body was discovered in a field the next morning. His temperature was dangerously low. His heart had stopped. 3:17 a.m. He survived. But he lost 2 fingers on his left hand. When he woke up, he kept asking for a woman named Eleanor. There was no Eleanor in his family, no Eleanor in the hospital, no Eleanor among his friends. Well, the nurse eventually asked him who she was. Daniel said she was sitting in the first chair. I searched the name, Eleanor Voss. I found a missing person case from 1998. A 36-year-old woman. disappeared after leaving her home at night. Her car was found beside a rural road. The police recovered a camera from inside the vehicle. The camera contained 13 photographs. 12 showed the same farmhouse. The 13th showed Eleanor standing inside it. I looked at the date, October 13th, 1998. The same date as Daniel's photograph. The same date printed on the back of the picture showing me. I searched Eleanor's case further. Her husband reported something strange. On the night she disappeared, Eleanor had called him. She had been crying. She told him, "Someone is taking pictures." He asked who. She said, I don't know. Then she whispered, "But every time the flash goes off, another person disappears." The call ended. She was never found. I looked at the 13 photographs. The first showed the farmhouse from the road. The second showed it closer. The third showed the porch. The fourth showed the white door. The fifth showed a dark figure behind the window. The sixth showed a man standing in the yard. The seventh showed Daniel. The eighth showed an empty chair. The ninth showed Eleanor. The 10th showed 12 people. The 11th showed the white door open. The 12th showed the room, and the 13th showed me. I zoomed in. My younger self was standing beside Daniel. I was holding the white door. My face was turned toward the camera. I was smiling. I had no memory of ever smiling like that. I printed the photograph. Then I noticed something written in the lower corner, a time, 3:17. I checked the original. The time wasn't there. It had appeared in the scan. I closed the file. My computer screen went black. Then the speakers came on. A voice whispered, "Don't count them." I jumped out of the chair. The speakers turned off. I unplugged the computer. For several minutes, I sat in silence. Then my phone rang. Daniel again. I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was weak. "I'm in the house." "What house?" "You know?" "No, I don't." "You do." I heard something behind him. 3 knocks. I stood up. "Daniel, where are you?" "The first place." "What does that mean?" "The quarry." My stomach tightened. "Why are you there?" "I need you to see something." "I'm not coming." "You already did." The call ended. I drove to Blackwater Quarry. It took nearly 2 hours. The place had been abandoned for years. The road leading there was barely usable. Trees had grown through the cracked asphalt. The quarry itself was surrounded by a rusted fence. There was a warning sign. No trespassing. I ignored it. The water was exactly as Daniel had described. Black. Still. Deep. I stood near the edge. Nothing moved. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. From beneath the water, I stepped backward. The sound came again. 3 knocks. Then I saw something beneath the surface. A pale rectangle. A door. Standing vertically at the bottom of the quarry. I couldn't breathe. I watched it for several seconds. Then the water moved. The door opened. Something came out. I couldn't see what. But I heard a child's voice. "Do you remember me?" I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car. When I looked back, there was someone standing beside the water. Daniel, he was watching me. But he didn't wave. He only pointed behind me. I turned. There was a white door standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the car into reverse. The door disappeared. I drove home. That night, I finally understood something. Daniel wasn't trying to convince me that he had died 12 times. He was trying to convince me that I had been there for all 12. The next morning, I called Raymond Bell. He was a retired detective who had investigated Eleanor Voss's disappearance. He agreed to meet me. We sat in a diner outside Pittsburgh. He was 73. White hair, thick glasses. Hands that shook slightly when he lifted his coffee. I showed him the photograph. His cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Where did you get this? Daniel Mercer. Bell stared at me. Daniel's alive? Yes. Bell looked away. No. I interviewed him. No. I have recordings. Bell's face tightened. Where? At a medical facility. What facility? I gave him the name. He shook his head. That place didn't exist in 1998. I didn't say it did. Bell leaned forward. Listen to me. His voice dropped. If Daniel Mercer has contacted you, stop looking. Why? Because that's what Eleanor did. What? She kept looking. For what? The house. I placed the photograph on the table. Tell me about it. Bell stared at the farmhouse. Then he whispered, We never found a house. What? We found the foundation. Of what? The farmhouse. When? 1971. He told me the property had burned down 40 years before Eleanor disappeared. The fire killed 12 people. 12 unrelated people. Nobody knew why they had been inside. There was no electricity connected to the property. No gas, no heating system, no candles. The fire had started at 3:17 a.m. Bell said firefighters found something strange inside. A room, no windows, no ventilation. 13 chairs, 12 bodies. One empty chair. What happened to the 13th person? Bell looked at me. That was the problem. What? There wasn't supposed to be a 13th person. He reached into his coat. He removed an old photograph. It was badly damaged, but I could still see the room. 12 bodies, one empty chair. And behind the chair stood a little girl. 4 years old, white dress, red ribbon. I looked at Bell. Abigail? His face changed. You know that name? Daniel told me. Bell sat back. Then it's already started. What has? He didn't answer. Instead he asked, Have you died yet? I said no. Bell looked relieved. Then you still have time. Time for what? To forget. I stared at him. What? That's how you survive. He explained what had happened in 1971. The 12 people inside the farmhouse hadn't been killed by the fire. They had been gone before it started. The fire came afterward. Something had taken them. Something that left no wounds, no poison, no evidence. Just 12 people sitting in 12 chairs. The 13th chair was empty. Firefighters assumed the empty chair belonged to someone who had escaped. But Bell said that wasn't true. Because one firefighter had seen the 13th person, a little girl, Abigail. She was standing in the doorway. She looked at him. Then she said, Don't let him remember. The firefighter asked who. Abigail pointed toward the empty chair. Then the building caught fire. The firefighter survived, but 30 years later he died at 3:17. Bell said that was when the department realized the deaths were connected. I asked how many people had died at 3:17 since then. He looked at me. 12? Daniel? Yes. Who was the first? Bell's eyes moved toward my photograph. Daniel wasn't the first. I felt cold. Who was? Bell whispered. You. I couldn't speak. Bell continued. You were 7 years old. I shook my head. No. You were brought to the hospital after being found unconscious near a river. I remembered nothing. You had no pulse. Bell looked directly at me. For 3 minutes. I felt the room disappear around me. What year? He answered. 1982. I stared at him. I was never in Pennsylvania in 1982. You were? How do you know? Because I was there. Bell opened a folder. Inside was an old police report. A photograph was clipped to the front. A little boy, 7 years old, standing beside a river. And beside him was a little girl in a white dress. I recognized her immediately, Abigail. But there was something else. A white door stood behind us. I looked at the date, June 17, 1982. I looked at Belle. You said my death was the first. Yes. Then why was Daniel's first death years later? Belle shook his head. Because Daniel didn't die 13 times. I stared at him. He died 12. Then what happened to the 13? Belle looked at me. You carried it. I didn't understand. He explained. The first death had opened something. Not the door, a memory. Every person who died afterward had carried a piece of that memory. Daniel was the last 12. He had been dying repeatedly because something was trying to return all 12 pieces to their original owner. Me. I looked down at the photograph. The little boy in the picture was smiling. I wasn't. I was looking directly at the white door. And behind the door was a face. My face. Older. Much older. I dropped the photograph. Belle whispered, "You're not being hunted." "What am I?" He answered, "You're being remembered." That night I went home and locked every door. I covered every mirror. I unplugged every clock. I didn't want to see 3:17. At 2:58 a.m., I finally fell asleep. At 3:17, I woke up. There was someone sitting at the end of my bed. A little girl, white dress, red ribbon. She was looking at me. I couldn't move. She raised one finger to her lips. Then she whispered, "Daniel's almost done." I forced myself to speak. "Done with what?" She pointed toward my bedroom door. It was open. Beyond it was a hallway I had never seen. At the end stood the white door, and beside it was Daniel. He looked terrified. The little girl climbed off the bed. She walked toward the hallway. Before entering, she turned back. Then she said, "Don't let him die 13 times." I stared at her. "Why?" She smiled. "Because the 13th death isn't his." She disappeared through the doorway. I got out of bed. The hallway was gone. My bedroom door was closed. Everything was normal, except for one thing. On the floor beside my bed was a photograph. I picked it up. It showed Daniel. He was sitting in one of the 13 chairs. 11 chairs were occupied, one was empty. And one chair was facing away from the camera. On the back of the photograph was a message. 11 remembered. I turned it over. Another line appeared beneath the first. 1 forgot. Then a final sentence slowly appeared. "The last one is you." I didn't sleep the following night, or the night after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same room. 13 chairs, 12 occupied, 1 empty, and Daniel sitting among them. I kept telling myself it was a dream, a nightmare caused by exhaustion. But dreams don't leave photographs on your bedroom floor. They don't leave handwriting on the back of those photographs. And they don't make a retired detective refuse to answer his phone. Raymond Bell disappeared 2 days after our meeting. His apartment was empty. His car was still parked outside. His wallet was on the kitchen table. His coffee was still warm. The police assumed he had left voluntarily. I didn't. Because on his kitchen wall, someone had written 3 numbers in black ink. 3:17, I photographed them. Then I noticed something underneath. A sentence. 11 have returned. I didn't understand what it meant. Not yet. I went back to the records. This time I stopped looking at Daniel. I started looking at the other 11 people. The people who had died, the people Belle had called pieces. They came from different states, different families, different backgrounds. Some had never met Daniel, some had never heard of him. But every one of them had reported seeing the same things before their deaths: a white door, 3 knocks, a room with 13 chairs, and a child named Abigail. The first was a woman named Margaret Hale. She was 52. She lived in Ohio. She died in her kitchen at 3:17 a.m. Her husband said she had been standing in front of the refrigerator. She suddenly stopped moving. Then she whispered, "Someone is behind me." Her husband turned and nobody was there. Margaret smiled. Then she said, "It's finally my turn." Her heart stopped. The second was a 16-year-old boy named Kevin Ross. He was in a swimming pool. The pool was only 4 feet deep. He had been standing in it. His mother watched him collapse. When she pulled him out, he was already gone. He revived 6 minutes later. The first thing he said was, "I left the door open." He died 13 months later. 3:17 a.m. The third was a nurse named Laura Bennett. She died in a hospital corridor. Her heart stopped while she was walking. A security camera captured her final moments. She stopped in front of an empty hallway. Then she looked towards something outside the camera's view. She smiled and said, "Abigail?" Then she collapsed. The footage showed something else. For exactly 3 seconds, a white door appeared at the end of the hallway. There was no door there before. There was no door afterward. The fourth was a truck driver. The fifth was a school teacher. The sixth was a firefighter. The seventh was a college student. The eighth was a retired judge. The ninth was a woman who worked in a funeral home. The 10th was a 12-year-old girl. The 11th was Raymond Bell. I stopped. I stared at his name. Bell wasn't one of the original 12. He had been investigating them, which meant he had become part of them. I checked his death record. It hadn't been filed yet because Bell wasn't officially dead. He was missing, but I knew what that meant. I counted the names again. Daniel, Margaret, Kevin, Laura, 5 others. Then Bell, 11. The 12th name was mine. I sat back. My hands went cold. I suddenly understood the photograph. 11 remembered. Daniel wasn't counting his deaths. He was counting the people connected to the door. Each death had transferred something. A memory, a fragment, a piece of whatever had happened in 1971, and now those pieces were returning. To me, I found another photograph. It was hidden inside Bell's file. The photograph showed 13 chairs. The first 12 had names written underneath them. The 13th did not. But someone had drawn a circle around it, and beneath the circle, the witness. I called Daniel. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" "Somewhere you can't reach." "Tell me what happened." "I told you." "You lied." Silence. "You said you died 12 times." "Yes." "You didn't." "No." "You died 11. A pause, then Daniel said, "You're getting close." "Close to what?" "The first death." "My death?" "Yes." "What happened to me?" Daniel took a long breath. "You were 7. "I know." "No, you don't." "Then tell me." "You drowned." "I know." "No." His voice became softer. "You didn't drown in a river." I stopped breathing. "Then where?" "The farmhouse." I closed my eyes, and the photograph, the white door, the little girl, the river, all of it was connected. "What happened?" Daniel said. "You were inside the house." "When?" "October 13th, 1998. "That isn't possible." "I was 23. "Yes." "So what happened when I was 7? That's what they wanted you to believe. I felt sick. Who? The people behind the door. Daniel stopped talking in riddles. You asked me what happened. Yes. You opened the door. Silence. You were 23. I looked at the photograph again. My hand was resting on the white door. You opened it? Yes. What was inside? Daniel whispered. Your childhood. I didn't understand, he continued. The door showed you everything you had forgotten. Why would I forget? Because you were the only one who came back. Back from where? The room. What room? The one beneath the farmhouse. I felt a pressure building behind my eyes. Suddenly I remembered something. A sound. A child's laughter. Then a hallway. Then a white door. I grabbed the edge of the table. Daniel continued. You went inside. I don't remember. You weren't supposed to. What happened? You saw 12 people. The chairs. Yes. And Abigail? She was there. What did she want? Daniel was silent. Daniel? She wanted you to sit down. Why? Because you were the 13th. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't sit. No. Then what did I do? You took her place. I didn't understand. Daniel said, that's why you forgot. I sat down slowly. What did I become? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he asked, do you remember your mother? Yes. Do you remember her dying? Yes. She didn't die. I froze. What? She disappeared. That isn't true. It is. I was at her funeral. That wasn't your mother. My throat tightened. Who was in the coffin? Daniel whispered. Someone who looked like her. I stood. No. Listen to me. No. You need to remember before the 13th death. When? Tomorrow? Whose? Daniel didn't answer. I already knew. Mine. The call ended. I spent the rest of the day searching old family records. I found my mother's death certificate. Then something strange happened. The date had changed. It had originally said October 14th, 1998. Now it said October 13th, 1998. Time of death, 3:17 a.m. I stared at the screen. Then the certificate disappeared. The entire file vanished. My computer displayed a single sentence. You were there. I closed the laptop. Someone knocked on my apartment door 3 times. I didn't move. Another 3 knocks. Then a woman's voice. Open the door. My mother's voice. Exactly. I whispered. Mom? The voice answered. Yes. I moved toward the door, then I stopped. Daniel's warning returned to me. Don't tell her your name. I stepped back. The voice changed. It became Abigail. Don't be afraid. I didn't answer. Then it became Daniel. You need to open it. I still didn't move. Finally, the voice became mine. You already opened it once. The hallway went silent. Then something slid beneath the door. A photograph. I picked it up. It showed me standing inside the farmhouse. I was 23. Daniel stood beside me. Abigail stood on my other side. But this time, I could see what was behind us. 12 people, sitting in 12 chairs, all looking directly at me. And in the 13th chair sat something wearing my face. I turned the photograph over. There was writing. The first death was not a death. Then another lie. It was a transfer. And beneath that, you gave your death to Daniel. I dropped the photograph. The room suddenly became cold. The lights flickered. My bedroom clock turned on by itself. 3:16. 1 minute. I stood completely still. 3:17. The apartment door opened. I hadn't touched it. Beyond it was darkness. Then I heard Daniel. "Come with me." I didn't move. He stepped into the hallway. His face looked normal again. His eyes were gray. He looked exhausted, human. "Where are we going?" "To the house." "What house?" "The one you remember." "I don't remember." Daniel smiled sadly. "You will?" Behind him stood Abigail. She was holding the white door open. I looked at Daniel. "What happens if I go through?" "You remember everything." "And if I don't?" He looked at Abigail. "Then the 13th death happens." "Whose?" Daniel didn't answer. Abigail did. She whispered, "Everyone's." I stepped into the hallway. The door behind me closed. The building disappeared. The hallway stretched impossibly far. At the end stood the farmhouse, exactly as it appeared in the photograph. The porch, the tall grass, the white door, and 13 windows glowing faintly in the darkness. Daniel walked toward it. I followed. As we reached the porch, he stopped. "Before we go inside," he said, "there's something you need to know." "What?" Daniel turned toward me. "I wasn't the one who came back 13 times. Then who was?" He pointed toward the white door. "You." The door opened. And suddenly I remembered. The farmhouse, the room, the 12 chairs, the fire, the people, Abigail, and the 13th chair. I remembered sitting in it. I remembered dying. And I remembered opening my eyes again. Not inside the chair, not inside the farmhouse. Inside Daniel. For the first time, I understood why he had spent 23 years dying. He hadn't been surviving death. He had been carrying me. Every time Daniel died, another piece of me returned. Every death brought me closer to remembering. And now there was only one piece left. The last one. Me. I looked at Daniel. "Why did you do it?" He smiled. "Because someone had to carry you." "Why?" "Because the thing behind the door wanted you back." The farmhouse groaned. The white door opened wider. Inside was the room. 13 chairs and 12 occupied, 1 empty. Daniel stepped forward. Then he stopped. He looked at me. "I'm sorry." "For what?" He whispered. "Because I'm about to die for the 13th time." And behind him, every person in the 12 chairs slowly turned their heads toward me. Then Abigail smiled. Finally. The 13th chair began to move. It slid backward, waiting for me. The chair moved again. A slow scrape against the wooden floor, then it stopped. I couldn't look away from it. The 13th chair was empty. Waiting. Daniel stood beside me. "You need to sit down," he whispered. "Why?" "Because you already did." I looked at him. "I don't understand." "You will." The 12 people sitting around the room began breathing at the same time. In, out, in, out. 12 breaths. Then silence. Abigail walked between the chairs. She looked exactly as she had in the photographs. 4 years old. White dress, red ribbon, bare feet. She stopped beside the 13th chair. Then she looked at me. "Do you remember your name?" I said nothing. She smiled. "Good." Daniel stepped closer. "Don't answer her questions." Abigail ignored him. "Do you remember the night?" A memory flashed through my mind. A farmhouse, rain, a burning smell, my mother's hand, Daniel screaming. I closed my eyes. Another memory. The room. 13 chairs, 12 people, and me. Standing beside the white door, I remembered opening it, I remembered the darkness. Then I remembered Abigail. She had been crying. I had asked her why. She pointed toward the chairs. Because they don't know they're dead. I remembered sitting beside her. I remembered asking, "Who are they?" She answered, "People who forgot." I opened my eyes. Daniel was watching me. "You remember?" I nodded. "Some of it." "That's enough?" Abigail shook her head. "No." Daniel looked at her. "Leave him alone," she smiled. "You've carried him long enough." Daniel's face changed. I understood then. The deaths weren't random. Every time Daniel died, something transferred from him to me. A memory, a piece of the night, a piece of whatever had happened in that room. The first death gave me the beginning. The second gave me the door. The third gave me Abigail. The fourth gave me the fire. The fifth gave me the 12 people. The sixth gave me the chairs. The seventh gave me my mother's face. The eighth gave me Daniel. The ninth gave me the voice. The 10th gave me the darkness. The 11th gave me the truth. The 12th gave me the memory of my own death. And the 13th would give me everything. Daniel walked toward the empty chair. "Don't," I said. He stopped. "You'll die." "I know." "For the 13th time," he smiled. "No." I stared at him. This would be the first time. I didn't understand. Then he turned around, and I saw what was standing behind him. Myself, the version of me from the photograph. 23 years old, standing perfectly still. His eyes were black. His face was expressionless. He looked at Daniel, then at me. Then he said, "You took too long." Daniel stepped backward. The room became freezing. Abigail moved toward the younger version of me. He reached for her hand. She took it, and suddenly every candle in the room went out. Darkness. Complete darkness. Then someone screamed, "Daniel!" I ran toward him. I heard him fall. When the lights came back, he was sitting in the 13th chair. His body was completely still. I ran to him. "Daniel!" Nothing. I grabbed his shoulder. His head fell sideways. No pulse, no breathing. Gone. Again. 13. I looked around the room. The 12 people were gone. The chairs were empty. Abigail was gone. The younger version of me was gone. Only Daniel remained. I put my hand on his chest. Nothing. Then I heard a heartbeat. Not Daniel's. Mine. It was coming from inside the wall. Thump, thump, thump. The white door appeared again. This time it was open. Behind it was the room I remembered from 1998. I stepped through, and suddenly I was 23 again. I was standing in the farmhouse. Rain was hitting the windows. My mother was crying. Daniel was standing beside me. Abigail was sitting on the floor, and 12 people were sitting in 12 chairs. I remembered everything. My mother had brought me there, not because she wanted to hurt me, because she believed she could save me. She had been investigating the deaths for years. She had discovered that every 13 years the house returned. Every time it returned, it needed 13 people. 12 would become witnesses. One would become the door. My mother believed she could stop it by giving it someone who was already dying. Me. But Daniel had followed us. He had entered the house, and when the door opened, it chose me. I remembered what happened next. The 12 people began speaking, all at once, and they said my name. Then Abigail stood. She walked toward me, and she whispered, "You can leave." I asked her how. She pointed toward Daniel. "He will carry you." I looked at him. Daniel shook his head. No. But I understood. Someone had to take my place. Someone had to become the 13th. I stepped toward Daniel, and something happened. The room went silent. The door opened. Darkness poured into the room. Daniel screamed. I felt something leave my body. Not blood, not breath, something deeper, a memory. My entire childhood disappeared. My mother's face, my father's voice, my first home, my first school, everything. Then I woke up outside the farmhouse. Daniel was beside me, alive. I wasn't. My heart had stopped for 3 minutes, and when it started again, I remembered nothing. That was my first death, not a death of the body, a death of memory. Daniel had taken it from me, and every 13 months afterward, the door took another piece from him, until there was almost nothing left. I returned to the room. Daniel was still sitting in the 13th chair. Gone. But now I knew what to do. I walked toward him. Abigail appeared beside me. You can't save him. I know. Then why are you here? I looked at Daniel. Because he saved me. Abigail smiled. That's not why. I looked at her. Then why? Because you finally remember. The room began to shake. The 12 chairs appeared again. One by one, the others returned. Margaret, Kevin, Laura, Eleanor, the others. Then Daniel's father. Then my mother. They all stood behind their chairs, watching. The white door opened. Something stepped through. It was tall, too tall. Its body looked human. But its face was wrong. It had no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just smooth skin. Then the face changed. Daniel, then my mother, then Abigail, then me. It was wearing every face I had ever loved. I understood what it was. It wasn't a demon. It wasn't a ghost. It was a memory. A thing that existed only when someone remembered it. The reason it needed 13 people was simple. 12 people could remember it, but the 13th could become it. That was the purpose of the chair. That was why it kept returning. It didn't want Daniel. It didn't want Abigail. It wanted me, because I had been the first person to survive the room. I had been the first person to escape with the memory. And as long as I remembered the door, the thing behind it could exist. I looked at Daniel, then I understood the final rule. Someone had to forget, not me. Daniel, I walked toward him. The thing screamed. The entire room shook. The 12 figures covered their ears. Abigail shouted, "Don't!" I placed my hand on Daniel's forehead, and I remembered everything he had carried for me. Every death, every fear, every moment. Then I gave it back, all of it. Daniel's eyes opened. He looked at me. For the first time, he looked peaceful. "You remembered?" he whispered. "Yes." "Then it's over." "No," he smiled. "It is for you." His body began to fade. I grabbed him. "Daniel." He shook his head. "You can't carry me anymore." "I don't want to." "You have to." Then he whispered, "Forget me." I couldn't. I tried. But I couldn't. The thing behind the door began screaming. Daniel disappeared. The 12 people disappeared. Abigail disappeared. The farmhouse began collapsing. The chairs burned. The white door cracked down the middle, and the thing behind it reached for me. I heard a voice, my own voice. "You will remember me." I answered, "No." The door shattered. Everything went white. Then I woke up in a hospital. A nurse was standing beside my bed. She said I had been unconscious for 2 days. I asked her what happened. She said someone had found me beside an abandoned farmhouse. I asked about Daniel. She looked confused. "Who?" "Daniel Mercer." She searched the records. Nothing. No Daniel Mercer, no medical file, no photograph, nothing. I asked about the farmhouse. She said there was no farmhouse, only an empty field. I didn't believe her. But when I was released, I drove there. The field was empty. No house, no porch, no white door, nothing. I almost believed it was over. Then I found something beneath the grass, a photograph. I picked it up. It showed me standing beside Daniel. We were both smiling. On the back was a date, October 13th, 1998. Below it was a sentence. 13 died. Then another. 1 remembered. I turned the photograph over again. A third line appeared. 1 was never human. I stared at it. Then I heard 3 knocks. Behind me. I turned. Nothing. 3 more knocks. I looked toward the field. There was a white door standing in the grass. I didn't move. The door opened. There was no darkness behind it this time. There was a small room, a table, 2 chairs, and a recorder. I walked closer. The recorder turned on by itself. My own voice came through the speaker. It said, "The first thing Daniel Mercer said to me was, 'I have died 13 times.'" I froze, because I recognized those words. They were from the beginning of my interview. But there was something wrong. I had never recorded that sentence. Not this time. The recording continued. Then I heard Daniel's voice. Quiet, almost whispering. "You're not the narrator." A pause, then. "You're the 13th witness." The recorder clicked off. I stood there for a long time. Then I looked at the white door, and I finally understood the truth. Daniel had never been the man who died 13 times. He had been the man who carried 13 deaths. I had been the man who remembered them. And the thing behind the door had been waiting for one final memory. Mine. I turned away. I walked back toward my car. I never looked behind me. But just before I reached the road, I heard a little girl whisper, "See you at 3:17. I stopped. I looked at my watch. 3:16. I closed my eyes. 1 minute passed. Then the watch changed. 3:17. Nothing happened. No door, no voice, no footsteps. For the first time in years, there was silence. I opened my eyes, and I smiled, because I finally understood the last rule. The thing could only return if I remembered it, so I forgot. I forgot the farmhouse. I forgot the chairs. I forgot Abigail. I forgot Daniel. I forgot the door. And for the first time since I was 23 years old, I felt free. I drove home. I slept. I woke the next morning. I made coffee. I went to work. Life continued. Weeks passed, and then months, and nothing happened. Until one night, I was cleaning an old drawer. I found a photograph. I almost threw it away. Then I noticed the writing on the back. I read it, and something inside me went cold. It said, "You can forget the door." I turned the photograph over. There was one final sentence, "But the door cannot forget you." I heard 3 knocks from inside my house. Knock, knock, knock. I stood completely still. Then someone whispered from the hallway, a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Daniel, don't open it." I closed my eyes. I didn't move. The voice whispered again. "Whatever happens." A pause. "Don't look at the clock." I slowly turned toward the wall. The digital clock was glowing. 3:17. And then I realized something that still keeps me awake whenever I hear 3 knocks. The door had never needed me to remember it. It only needed me to believe I had forgotten. And somewhere in the dark, something was still sitting in the 13th chair.